Free speech is under attack at Canada's Acadia University. Today I talked to the professor at the heart of this controversy to get an update about the bureaucratic war on his academic independence. Professor Rick Mehta has been teaching psychology for 14 years. Sometimes he talks about things in his classroom or on his social media accounts that challenge his students' thinking on issues of immigration, on gender politics, multiculturalism, even the gender wage gap, and the Liberals' bungled Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Now, last time I talked to Professor Rick Mehta on my weekly full-length show, The Gun Show, at the time, he detailed his struggle and his de facto punishment for offering opinions in his classroom that deviate from the standard campus social justice ethos. Mehta told me in that earlier interview he feels his course load and course allocation has been diminished by the university as punishment for challenging the way his students think. There were dueling petitions at the time. One petition was to get him fired for offending left-wing sensibilities. That petition read, Professor Rick Mehta of Acadia University expressed he is against trans rights, believes residential schools did good, and believes that the Indigenous industry are exploiting Western values of justice. All these groups are protected under the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act. The marginalized communities in Nova Scotia cannot feel comfortable having this man, who is against so many protected marginalized groups, teaching classes at a respected university such as Acadia. Now, Mehta has denied these assertions that he's any of those things. The other petition is, well, it's just asking that Mehta be left alone and for everyone to mind their own business. But now the war on Mehta is getting serious, dangerous to his career and future. The university has received repeated hurt feelings complaints, and now they're taking action. According to the Globe and Mail, the university won't say how many or what those complaints are. But Mehta says he is being investigated for violating the discrimination, sexual harassment, and personal harassment policies at the university. Mehta first got a formal warning letter to stick to the curriculum, but he persisted, saying he was only trying to offer students a different perspective from what he calls the dominant political orientation on campus. Acadia University in Wolfville, Nova Scotia, has now launched a formal investigation into complaints leveled against the psychology professor over his social media posts and some of the opinions he offered to his students in the classroom. For example, Mehta once defended the free speech rights of former conservative Senator Lynn Bayak, who controversially said there was a more nuanced way to look at residential schools in Canada. Bayak also posted letters to her website from her supporters that the Conservative Party considered to be intolerant. Mehta said at the time, I quote, I was supporting Senator Bayak, not her positions, just her right to put letters on a website and to express her views. Heather Hemming is the vice president of academic at Acadia, and she said, and I quote, the nature and frequency of these complaints and the significance of the allegations is concerning for the university, and we have determined the necessity of proceeding to a formal investigation. So, Acadia has hired a professor from Dalhousie University's School of Law to investigate Mehta. So that brings us to where we are today. But instead of just talking about Professor Mehta, I actually talked to him. This is the interview I recorded earlier with Professor Rick Mehta, where he gives me an update on what's going on with him and his battle at Acadia. Here. So, welcome back, Professor Rick Mehta. Why don't you give us an update to the ongoing fight for free speech that you're having at the University of Acadia?
Well, it's been an interesting time here. Thankfully, I was able to figure out what had happened to explain where I am in this position. So actually, there was an article in the APTN News, came out very recently on February 21st, and there I found a quote that I found rather interesting. And so I'm reading this right from the article. So it says, Scott Roberts, a spokesman for the university, says Acadia will not be issuing a public statement regarding Mehta comments or behavior, but is, and now I put in quotation marks, currently providing solutions for students who have raised concerns so they are not forced to take a course from Dr. Mehta. Okay, so that's what the spokesman says. And so now we can find evidence for that, which is that my courses have been taken away from me. So instead of teaching the large required sections of intro psych, I've been given these small off sections. I'm not teaching the research methods course anymore. So that's basically what happened on my courses. I put in an appeal, argued that based on my record, that's not warranted, and that got overturned by the dean's office. And then in my intro psych classes, I talked about things like how the wage gap is a myth and how basically, if there is any systemic discrimination in fields like STEM and academia, it's in favor of women. So I presented some of those kinds of findings. And then in a class on human development, I presented a feminist perspective on our education system, and it actually argued that our education system discriminates against boys. And so that caused a bit of an uproar. So that was on February, I think, 9th that I did that class. Then on February 13th, I got a letter from the VP academic saying that I violated, that they're going to investigate me for personal and sexual harassment and discrimination. And if you look at the policy, it explicitly says that intentions don't matter. It's just about outcomes. So it's basically on, hurt feelings. That's all it boils down to. So, yeah, and I don't know what I've been accused of or anything like that. It's just going to be by this lawyer, former, I think, president at Mount Allison, if I'm not mistaken, and a professor emeritus at Dalhousie University is going to determine the course of what happens and how things will unfold. So that's where things stand.
And an allegation of sexual harassment is so devastating to someone's career. The connotations that carries are so difficult to recover from. And I'll ask you straight out, have you ever actually sexually harassed anybody?
Oh, God, no, that's a appalling thing to do. So, no, I would never do anything like that. It goes against everything I feel to be decent human behavior. Same with personal harassment and, being a visible minority myself and having gone through racism as a child, that's the last thing I'd want to do to another human being, which is why I'm part of the I'm disturbed by the anti-white movement that's happening at the universities.
Yeah, this is just so dumbfounding that, you just laying out the facts and presenting, an alternative perspective, and sort of bursting the left-wing bubble of these students has resulted in allegations against you that are so difficult for a man to recover from. Do you think they're actually weaponizing the complaint mechanism at the school against you to shut you up and shut others up? I mean, this will send a chill across academia and specifically at Acadia. If anybody is going to come out in your defense, this will serve to shut them up. They don't want these devastating allegations leveled against them.
Yeah, well, they all do it in silence as well. It's all kept secret. So I found it interesting that our grievance officer, who's supposed to be the union rep who defends the faculty members if there's a dispute between faculty and administration, told me in an email specifically to take down my social media posts and not talk to the media or anything like that because that would hurt me at arbitration. And so I decided, ultimately I work for the general public. That's who I'm accountable to. So I want the general public to know because, I think realistically, I have a better shot in the court of a public opinion than I do in the university system.
Well, and also your
And that's why I'm someone who...
Go ahead.
Yeah. So sorry, that was why I leaked the information to the press, because once I had what seemed like, a coherent, unfolding of what had happened. So I think all I'm doing now is using Facebook and Twitter to present the evidence to the general public and let them decide for themselves. I don't think I need much commentary at this stage.
No, you really don't. And I think your silence on this issue only serves to help the people who are leveling these accusations against you. If you were silent, there would only be one side of this story out there. And I think your side of the story is an important one to tell. What will the consequences be if indeed you are found, for lack of a better term, guilty of, sexual harassment and personal harassment for daring to present facts that support the other side of the story in the classroom?
It's hard to know for sure because nothing's actually been stated explicitly, but I think the worst case scenario would be being fired from the university. And if that's the case, I'm perfectly fine with it. I'd be happy to make a dignified exit because my self-respect is not for sale. So I don't mind giving up the six-figure salary and the gold-plated pension because, and my personal dignity and self-respect, I think, comes first. I mean, from the perspective of dealing with my students, how can I expect them to respect me if I don't even respect myself? So I think, if anything, that would be the lesson I'd want them to take from this.
How can people help you, Rick? How can they support you? What is there some mechanism by which we can show support for your battle for free speech at the university?
Yeah, so what I've done is on my Facebook profile, which is what I'm using to communicate with the general public, more that than Twitter, just because with Facebook you don't have the character limit. So yeah, letters to the dean, department head, VP academic, and my designated head. So yeah, my designated head put a letter in my file, basically saying that there were these complaints and these are what I need to do. And so it's not officially a letter of discipline, but the idea is that if I don't follow what's in that letter, then I can be disciplined. So writing to those four individuals, I think might be a way. But ultimately, I think maybe people want to write to the government because maybe some outsiders to start looking at our education system objectively. Because I don't think the problem, I think, is so deep that we can't solve it within the university system itself anymore. This really needs to be a public outcry with the entire education system, including the elementary and high schools, because that's where they're now trying to implement a social justice agenda onto children and high school students in place of actual, curriculum now.
Yeah, you know what? That's true. They don't come to you and suddenly discover that they're censorious social justice warriors. They're created long before they ever get to the university system. What do you think should happen to universities who do not uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms for both the students and the faculty?
My own personal opinion on that is a cutting of funding altogether. The only caveat I'd put for that is that there be generous severance packages for the support staff because they do a great job trying to support us. So if it wasn't for them, I would not be able to do my job. But in terms of faculty members and administration, I have no qualms about seeing, them losing their jobs whatsoever. So I think the only ones who should get severance package are the support staff. That's my personal opinion.
So what's next, Rick? When do we know what happens to you? When do we know the outcome? When will you see some sort of resolution one way or the other?
I'm as in the dark as you are, so I'm just waiting for events to unfold. So I think having gone to the media has probably, I like to think, I'd like to hope, put a monkey wrench in their plans. So,
Yeah,
and because now they're going to be under the public scrutiny, that's what I'm hoping would happen.
well, and rightfully so. I mean, anybody who a parent or prospective enrollee at Acadia University needs to know what they're getting into before they plunk down that check for tuition. Rick, I want to keep in touch with you and with your fight for free speech on campus. Please stay in touch with me so that we can keep everybody apprised. I think this is a subject that most normal Canadians care deeply about, and I think that the university underestimates how deeply people care about this at their own peril. Thanks for speaking out. Please fight on, and again, we'll stay in touch.
Okay, my pleasure. Take care, Sheila.
Now, leftists talk about scientific biology all the time. They say crazy things like some men have uteruses. A liberal arts student isn't a biologist, but they are certainly allowed to have and express whatever opinions they want, however wrong those opinions may be. But now those same campus leftists, including those in administration, are weaponizing the official complaints process because people like Mehta are exercising the same allegedly government-protected rights they have to opine, to muse, and to speak their minds. And the leftists are doing this all in the name of tolerance. And it really doesn't matter if the complaints are founded, because being dragged through the process, well, that's really the punishment. And the punishment won't end there. We're all being punished when you think of it, because we inhibit the growth of society when schools charge tuition to make sure people are never taught to think critically. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. If you liked that, then you are going to love my weekly full-length show, The Gun Show, where I have interesting interviews with interesting people. To get access to my show and the rest of our amazing premium content, become a Rebel subscriber today.